Hello, time to make another video. There'll be two today because I missed the last two. So I'll make two today and two tomorrow. That will be my coverage for the ones I missed. Now, because someone complained about me constantly writing, I have consolidated my points and will address them in kind. So hopefully that should help. I'll still move the paper a bit, point, and, just generally express, but that will be what I do to at least make things more consolidated and functional. So let's talk about the problems of polygamy. For those who don't know, polygamy is when there are multiple wives or multiple husbands in one relationship. So let's say there's a king and he has 3 wives. That is polygamy. The Mormons are a classic example, though their main church has banned it. So the problem with it, well, there's several, but for one, the male and female populations are roughly equal. Now there is some difference. For example, sometimes it's 51 to 48, other times it's 52 to 47, or 48 rather. It's slightly different depending on the area, and this does vary to some extent. In some places minimal are populated, others females are. But irregardless, males and females fundamentally have roughly equal populations overall. And so, if you have polygamy, let's say 3 are taken up by one person, then that creates a group of people who by nature cannot get married, because if everyone else in one gender is married, right, they're out. And if these people over here who are not married but are heterosexual are in this situation, they can't marry in because marriage across the populations is now impossible because everyone's already in a marriage and they're out of the dating pool. Now, theoretically, they could marry each other, homosexuality, but if we assume the homosexual populations are roughly equivalent between the genders, that will not be a thing that helps. Indeed, it'll just be pushing those people to the side. The fact is, when these groups are roughly equal, any favoring of one group in marriage in terms of number naturally means others will not be able to, because there's a limited number of people on the planet, or in the region, depending on how the marriage goes. There's also internal jealousy that naturally happens. Think about it. If you're splitting your time between 3 different women as a man, would that not create some jealousy in your partners? After all, if you spend more time with wife A than wife C is likely to get jealous of wife A. And that means that there's going to be negative relationships. There's going to be conspiring, regret, anger, hatred. Going to cause issues. Even if you try to perfectly divide up your share of love with these people, let's say you try to evenly take care of wives A, B, and C, even if you do, there's still going to be those who think, I'm not getting enough attention. I'm not getting as much attention as I deserve. And that creates jealousy and internal bickering in a relationship that makes things more complicated than necessary. Then there's external jealousy. As mentioned up here, when male and female populations are roughly equal, those who marry off and exclude themselves from the dating pool because they're already hooked cannot marry with the others unless somehow that relationship breaks up or a replacement is needed or whatever. Well, if you're one of those men or women who cannot get into a relationship because all of them are already in a polygamous relationship with someone else and are married to someone else, you're going to get jealous. Especially because it's often the rich, which I'll get to in a second. You're going to think, man, those elitist pieces of garbage, how dare they marry when I can't? And so, jealousy occurs, anger, hatred, and generally violent actions. Because people who are jealous but still want to get married are going to take actions that are often rash, especially when they're younger. Remember, we are still people, and people are still animals. There's still that drive to reproduce. And if you can't because everyone else is already in a relationship and you can't just, hook up with a random person, those desires are going to go unfulfilled. That creates problems. And people are going to act out on others for those problems, which creates a lot of problems in and of itself. Now, another big thing to consider is also, importantly, how much this favors the upper classes. Think about it, who's actually able to support multiple parents? The rich. Who's able to support multiple spouses? The rich. All the children from those spouses? The rich. The rich can afford to have more women or more men married to them because fundamentally they have a glut of resources to use, and they will use them. Needless to say, polygamy is not something that favors the lower classes. Indeed, it likely means they are going to go extinct. Their bloodlines are going to die out. Now, if you're an elitist, you may see no problem with this. But even I, as someone who I would argue is an elitist in several regards, still sees a problem with this because it encourages jealousy, but also, with this heavy favoritism, you create a situation where the upper classes are enormously privileged without benefit, and the lower classes are enormously aggrieved. This creates a recipe for conflict. Unlike a growing system like capitalism, where the market can grow and people can get more money, even if the percentages change, in this case, the number of men and women is rather limited, and you can't exactly produce them quickly. I mean, if I somehow get a person pregnant, it would take 9 months for my kid to be born. Same is true with every other man who wants to try it. And, even if we do it artificially, that is still the case. And thus, humans don't grow quick enough, and they don't mature fast enough, to be able to rapidly change these things. It is very functionally a stable system, especially in the modern day with population growth slowing down and the population somewhat stagnating. Not completely, but somewhat. And so, this heavy aggrievement generated is likely to result in conflict and thus problems. This is bad for society as a whole and thus should be avoided. Furthermore, with polygamy, adultery is far harder to prove or disprove. Let's say you cheat on someone, right? But you say, oh, I'm polygamous, this is just one of my wives. I just forgot to tell my other wives. Is it believable? No. Is it theoretically legal? Yes. And not only does that encourage the above, it also creates massive legal problems. Because with adultery being something that can be put in a will, or, in the cases of marriage, an agreement about when divorce occurs, let's say you have an adultery clause for divorce. If someone cheats, you get something in return for that cheating, right? Alright, you have that. You sign the agreement. Small problem. If you can't prove it's adultery and it's just another marriage, well then how does that clause activate? Alright, it can't. And if it can't activate, guess what? Suddenly, it's completely worthless. Adultery is far harder in a polygamous society because it's a lot harder to prove. In a monogamous society, literally just sleeping with another person outside of your one marriage is adultery and can be easily proven. Because you have your marriage, and that person isn't part of it. Even if you claim open relationship, it doesn't matter. As far as the law is concerned, you are married to this person, you slept outside of it, therefore, you have cheated. It is adultery. Simple. It can be proven, even if people don't call it fair. Finally, succession and inheritance is much harder. Again, there's jealousy, but also, if more kids have the same relationship, suddenly you have to factor in making sure it's split up not just between the kids that you have, but between the wives. Think of it. If you have a house on a hill, a mansion, you not only have to split up that territory between your children, but also your spouses, or put it to the spouses to then give to the kids. Either way, it has to be divided up far more, and you have to weigh the pros and cons of everything while trying to minimize, again, jealousy. It makes inheritance far harder to deal with. This is why, for example, primogeniture became such a big deal and why people were willing to straight up kill others to ensure that things got passed down in one straight line to the firstborn in monarchies. For example, the Ottomans, rather famously, would kill all their brothers to ensure that things got passed down to the eldest son. Why? Simple. If they did it that way, they would ensure internal stability. Now, it didn't necessarily have to be the eldest, just the favorite, but the same problems occur whether it's the eldest, the favorite, the youngest, or whoever decides to pick up a coin first. Inheritance is far harder when there's many more people in the same family to split things to, and it's even worse when you have to factor in the maternal factor, the maternal number specifically. Do you go with wife number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.? Polygamy essentially is just an inefficient and ineffective way of having a relationship. It isn't functional, nor does it have particularly long-lasting effects. In fact, love and relationships and polygamy both tend to have problems with commitment because of especially this. Now, needless to say, some people still say, well, it's your choice. And yeah, it is. It's also your choice to punch yourself. Doesn't mean it's suddenly a good thing. And it's your body, so punching yourself technically isn't doing any harm to someone outside of you. But it's still a bad thing to do, because it harms you, and it harms others, by extension. Polygamy is that. It is that punching yourself in the face. It hurts you, it doesn't benefit you. But people still might do it, and it should still be ostracized and called as stupid as it is. That'll be all. Thank you for watching.